Good afternoon, everybody. This is Steve here again with another exciting edition of Alliance of the Sacred Sons. Now, this is going to be a little bit different. We're actually going to be doing a training Let's Play. It's going to be set up as a tutorial. This is for version 7.5.1, which actually you don't have yet, but you will have soon. It can be played with 7.5. There's just a couple of little additions. It's going to be broken up into several videos, about 20 minutes long. The first video will just be an introduction and setting up the game and in what the first turn should look like, things to kind of set up your strategy. It's not necessarily going to be a where everything is or the interface. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about that, but generally it's going to be about what should I do? How do I actually play this huge, complicated game? Well, glad you asked, because that's what we're going to do. So we're going to go ahead and do a new reign. Now, for a game like this, I advise to go as small as possible. This is how wide your empire is. Basically, the wider this is, the more constellations it can capture. For a starter game, you probably want that to be as small as possible. So now we're going to go ahead and choose culture. Now, this is going to get an update pretty soon. For now, you can just leave it as Neo-American. The biggest things that affect it right now are which houses will be affiliated with you. There are 10 great houses in the game, and they're randomly generated. So if you have Hawkins and Horlock, if one of those show up in the game, then they will probably be either allied or cooperating with you. So this is a pretty good one. It's a pretty generic culture. So now we're going to set up the house. So we can call our house name whatever we want. I call it Hawkstorm. You can call it whatever. Choose a sigil. I'm going to go ahead and go with this one. No, actually I like this one. And we'll do a similar color. Notice that you can't move on until you select a name, sigil, and color. Now you have 200 points. Now this is very important. You do want your house traditions to be important in how you play. For instance, if you feel like you do a lot of manufacturing, you'll want a high manufacturing tradition. If you mine a lot of minerals, you'll want a high mining. If you need a lot of money, economics is important, ADM, and so on and so forth. So what I generally do, since I'm the ruling house, I put this at about 70. You can go as high as 100. That generally means that my characters are going to be very skilled in generating ADM, and also they'll tend to have higher government ratings, which is important. Money is also important, so I'll tend to put this pretty high too, around 50 or so. Mining can be very important. There are not a lot of houses that do it well, and they tend not to be aligned with you if you have picked traditionalist culture. So I'll give myself a fair amount of points there. Manufacturing, decent amount. I'm going to give myself a little bit of food and a little bit of energy. This generally tells how much energy that you can get from each planet. And energy is actually a pretty important resource. We don't have military quite yet. That's coming up soon. When that happens, it'll probably rebalance and there'll be something else to pick. All right, next we're going to select our emperor. You can be a male or a female. I'm going to be a male because I'm male, and I'll call myself Stevonius. Again, you can call yourself whatever you want, and I'll be this fine-looking gentleman. This gives you a chance to kind of look everything over, make sure that it's correct. If it is, click on your Empire Awaits, and we will now generate the game. So as you can see, one thing I've done in this version, we've actually taken out minor houses. They don't really add a lot to the game right now. The original intent was that minor houses could kind of grow into great houses, and we may actually do something with that later down the road, but right now they prove nothing but overhead. So this kind of limits the characters. Instead of having 150 characters to scroll through, half of which you'll probably never talk to, now we keep it about 70 to 80, which is quite a bit more manageable. We may even be able to cut that a little bit more. Another change I'm going to be making is I'm going to be downscaling the amount of pops. Currently, each pop is worth 1 million people. I'm going to change that to where a pop is worth between 2 and 5 million. Haven't quite decided yet, but the key is pops should be very important, and they take so much overhead. They're very complex structures. They have their own culture, their own ideas, their fear, love. They have events, migration. There's a lot going on. So that actually is what takes the vast majority of time, is iterating through each pop in the game. There can be thousands and thousands depending on the size of your empire. So we're going to go ahead. Now this is launching right now. So we're going to go ahead and see what our situation is. Now, one cool thing is I don't know what's going to happen either. So that's kind of neat. All right. So we have, looks like just one constellation, which is interesting. It's pretty small, but that's fine. So what I like to do first is look to see if I have any major alerts. So I have government sector. Okay, so we've built 5 government sectors, which is fine. We know that those are being added. We've added some alert. There are now 34 alerts in the game, and I'm going to be rewriting the alert system to not only have it by severity, but also by category. So you'll know kind of there will be a build category, an intel category, and a military category, kind of similar to the command modes actually. All right, so let's see. First of all, let's see what our trade situation looks like. So again, we just have the one hub since we don't have the others out. So we have several system hubs. Now, essentially the way trade works, you have province hubs that send goods directly to your capital world, which is Osiris, or actually New Terra. And then within the province hub, as long as they're touching, one part of the hub is touching, they're considered part of a trade group. So any system hub and those planets contained that are within the province hub can trade between each other, and they can send goods. So for instance, this AOD system, any of its planets that have a trade hub, which in this case is just Illich, can send goods through trade. Since it has a system trade hub, it can send any goods to any planet within the system. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get rid of these here since we know they're there. All right, so that's why it's important to kind of build your trade up, because that's one way to balance out resources, and then obviously a way for planets to earn money. All right, so doesn't look like anything major. I don't have any system hubs that look like they need to be added off though, and I don't actually have any planets other than Plenitude, which has the province hub. Now we do have Endearing that doesn't have, looks like a hub. Looks like Wanderer has no trade hub, so that may be an issue. We'll kind of take a look at our house situation before we decide what to do. The second thing I like to do is go into military command mode, and I like to look and see what the logistical network. Now these have been recently rebalanced to where there's only 3 levels that can be built, but level 3, as you can see, is much bigger, so it can encompass a larger area. The only problem is the level 3 in the center isn't going to actually catch any particular area, so we would need to build a logistical network kind of on the frontier in order to catch a constellation out here. So we may end up kind of scrapping the current network, so we'll kind of look at that. Now the next thing we're going to look at is our demographics. Right now everything's at 50%. That is your love, which is up here. It always starts at 50%. We kind of look at our populations. Didn't have a whole lot of migration. Looks like 4 million over here. We lost 4 million. Just a little bit of here and there. So, you know, nothing too major. And then second to last, we look at the political command mode. And this shows the influence. This was a recent addition to the game. So you can see over here, this is the house that has the most influence in the system. Typically, it's going to be the house that has the most stuff in there. Influence also radiates out, so it's very important when you're trying to decide what planets to claim. For instance, over here, we have House Iloa actually has the most influence, and that's because they have a system here that they have by far the most influence. They have 124 influence, whereas Barwan, which is this house, only has 61. So even though it's closer, you can see that Iloa has significantly more influence. And of course, since I am up here with only 118, then my influence is actually less still. So influence matters when you're trying to claim a system. Now, if I'm trying to claim a system that I don't have quote-unquote influence over, in other words, if I'm not this person right here, then the house that does have full claim is going to get very upset with me. So right now, unfortunately, I don't have any systems that I can reach out and claim unless I build a complex that will take me to another system to actually kind of take a look at that. So we're going to go ahead and look at the house system now. All right, as I said, Hawkins is in the game, so we are allied. Now that's great. So what that means, A, they're not going to attack me, of course. They're going to always share their system hubs with me when I have Empire resources. And perhaps more important is they're going to always share their ADM. So if you have a relationship of Cold War or worse, they are not going to share their ADM because basically they are not trying to help you, and especially limited war and total war, they're not trying to help you with your project. So you want to build relationships, or you just need to build a big house with a lot of planets that produce ADM if you want to get anything done. So we have them, then we have Barwan, which is neutral. Now Barwan is really, really good at economy. So they are very good to bring planets into line as far as if you have a planet that is doing poorly, and you don't have anybody in your house that you feel can bring it up to speed, then you start looking at the houses. And of course, if I have a poor relationship, they're not going to allow their characters to serve, and thus you won't have them available. So that's another plus. So everybody's only got one house holding, so everybody's pretty much the same. It looks like the power is pretty well set. Now you see here, this is the intel I have on each house. So in green, it basically means I have near full intel. So I know what their power is. I know how many holdings they have. I know how much money they have in their treasury. And more importantly, I know what they're going to be doing. Now in the first turn, we only know their ultimate strategy. We don't know their secondary, and that will be determined during the second turn. So since Hawkins is the most powerful, even though they're my ally, I still like to keep an eye on them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and assign an Inquisitor. Now I only have 2 action points. By the way, I'm going to go over this briefly since this has been changed substantially since the last build. I'm going to go ahead and assign an Inquisitor. Now this is my espionage rating, and this is my spec ops rating. Espionage is good for when you're trying to gather intel. Spec ops is good for special ops like intimidation, assassination, blackmail, etc. So I'm going to go ahead, since it's not really critical that I need to know what they're doing, I'm going to go ahead and put Suspira Nelson on it because she's got a pretty good intel rating. So I'll go ahead and assign her. So now that when we get back in there, you can see they've got the little death's head. That's the Inquisitor symbol. That means that there is an Inquisitor assigned. And then when we go to the intel, we can see that she's preparing the mission. She's on her way to Hawkins, which is the throne world for House Hawkins. I'm sorry, that's the house name. But she's going to be going to their throne world. That's where she'll actually be. And this is the prep at 0%. So she's preparing her mission. So every turn this will go up. When it hits 100%, she will then start gathering intel. All right, so this kind of also leads me to, so I have 3 Inquisitors. I always start out with 3. So right now I've got a really good Inquisitor. He's got a 4 rating, his squad, which is really good. So I'm going to kind of hold him in reserve. The only problem is they cost a lot of money. I've got 2 pretty talented ones, so that's going to be a big bite of my budget, because my budget for this starts at only 500 billion credits, so that's going to be a big hit if I want to do that. Okay, so I don't have any terrible position right now. If I look at kind of my planets, let's take a look at, actually, well, I guess we can go here too. Okay, so this shows all the planets. This is kind of an overview. So right now you can kind of see, you can also get this from the economic view. New Terra is making about 300 billion credits a year. Juthurbog's about 250. However, they're not allied with us, which means they're not going to necessarily share their full amount. And then Olympia, Wanderer, Iloa Prime are losing a little bit of money, which is normal. Most of these planets will either be losing a little bit of money or gaining a little bit. And then Illich is also gaining money. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go into my finance screen and take a look. Okay, here are the planets. So this is what I'm actually getting for the share. Now, I have a fantastic financial prime. They're getting 115% of what is claimed to me, which is 25%. This is the holdings tax here. So in other words, this is the total gross planetary product. This is what the planet will earn at the end of the year, what I can tax on. So of that, I get 75% if it's my planet, which is why New Terra is at 220. Well, 75% of that. And then my financial prime, Broglio Kubra, is actually collecting an extra 15% bonus. If he was at 100%, I would get exactly 75% of this, exactly 25% of this. Now, if they're in the negative, the houses are responsible for paying, not me. So I don't have to subsidize them. I do have to subsidize my houses, but fortunately I don't have any that are negative. I can change the holdings tax. It just costs me 50 power. And as I'll explain, power is super important, and you don't want to do that for no reason. So right now, I'm pretty happy. I'm going to go ahead and leave him, plus Halcyon Musharraf. Kind of see what kind of relationship. I forgot. I got a Cold War. So I definitely don't want to remove him. Even if he was bad, I would probably hold off. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set my budget, because you see I have to do that before I can move forward. So military, the higher you go, it's obviously going to have a huge effect in 0.8 and 0.9 when the military system is fully added. But right now, what military does, the more you put in, the more power it gives you, because you're basically ruling through your military. Domestic lowers your fear and raises your love, but it's very expensive. It's not nearly as cost effective as military. So in other words, if I were to have them equal, military would be about 3 times as effective. So you need to spend a lot of money domestically to have essentially the same effect without the fear. Because when you increase your power through the military, you get a lot of fear too. So I'm going to go ahead and put that about half. Now remember I said that I had an expensive Inquisitor budget, so I need 165 billion credits basically just to fund their squads. So otherwise, if I don't, each one has a 59% chance of disbanding at the end of the year. Well, I don't want that, so I'm going to go ahead and crank it up. See, it goes yellow, and okay, it's at 0. So I don't have much left for informers. This is the informer symbol. 13 billion to give out among all my planets, but I don't have that many planets, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Reforms still don't have in the next update, major update, they're going to start using. Now savings, anything that's not spent will go back into my house treasury. This is very important because if my house treasury is ever at 0 and I have a negative gross empire product at the end of the year, I lose the game. The empire is considered to have gone bankrupt, and basically the empire collapses because there's nothing holding it together because there's no central bank anymore. So now what I can do, if I had said 500 wasn't enough, I can actually add a subsidy up to the amount of my house treasury. And then that would be added, and then I could use that for a lot more money. I don't want to do that because it costs me 25 power to do that, and I only have a 283. So that would cost me a lot. I don't need to do that the first turn. So I'm going to go ahead and make these settings. So budget submitted. So now as you can see, I can do my turn. All right. Last thing I want to show is, and we can kind of get into a lot of stuff here, but I just want to kind of an overview. The assassination chance. This is fairly new. It starts out about 2.5%. Now, I want to make clear, this is not a 2.5% chance of being assassinated. This is a 2.5% chance every month of having an attempt occur the following month. And you will get an alert whether or not that happens or not. So really, in principle, if you take the right precautions, you have a very, very low chance of being assassinated. But if it goes here, that's about a 5 to 10, 10 to 15, and 15+%. So if it's up here, I mean, you got a decent shot of having an attempt every month. Now, this is not for characters. These are not part of plots. This is just the general rabble, your pops, taking pot shots at you. So, but it does give you kind of another sense of where you're at. Now, if you have a lot of power, or if you have a high love, popular support, also high fear, if people have low unrest, all that factors in. So you can have a 0 assassination chance. It's highly recommended to do that wherever possible. The last thing is your Emperor power. So it's put in the center. This is where AP used to go. Here's the deal. Emperor, when I was thinking about the game and kind of really thinking about, well, what's fun? Like what separates Alliance of the Sacred Sons? You are playing as the Emperor, and you are that person. And the one thing you have going for you is your influence. You have a title, but without the power behind it, you're nothing. And so I thought, well, what happened, you know, because power is a central part of the game. What would happen if the Emperor's power was at 0? Well, you would basically become a figurehead. So that's what happens. The power has been modified somewhat to where you can see every turn, everything you do, basically, whether you do a project or an interaction with a character, make a decision in a plot. I mean, pretty much every single action you take will result in a up or down of your power. So it's very important to kind of control that. So just want to kind of get into that. So now let's talk a little bit about strategy, since that's kind of the point of this. A 283 power is not great because when I look at characters, when I go to the character screen, so we've got here we've got a 221 provincial governor. Fortunately, they're on my team, so to speak. We look at some of the house leaders. Actually, we can do that easier here. Hawkins has a 173, 144, 143, 174. So, I mean, they're not great because the houses are very small. Most of them only have one holding, but in bigger games where they can have 5 or 6, they can be quite the thorn in your side. So a 283 in that kind of game is really not that great. You really would like to be above 400. So the best way to gain power, obviously military is one way, but then of course you have a fear compound which can lead to unrest and riots. What I like to do is projects that help the people. Now I don't have enough AP for projects. It takes 2 AP. So what I am going to do is I'm going to take a look at my house. I'm going to start laying the groundwork. Now bar 1, I look at what houses can I sort of influence that I want to influence. So Hawkins, they're already on my side. I don't want to piss them off too much. Iloa, now when we look at Iloa, remember I said they're a mining, so they're good at mining. They're better than I am. So they're another good house to have on your side, because if you don't have materials, namely your basic, heavy, and rare materials, you're not able to build anything. And eventually, building your military, you won't be able to without having these materials. So it's a good kind of practice. but they kind of hate me, and this person sees me as a rival. So let's take a look at bar 1. Okay, they're kind of neutral. Their big thing is economic tradition, so they're probably a good planet to have on my side. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead, let's talk to this guy. This is the house leader, Equanio San Pristina. So we have a very neutral relationship. He's indifferent. You know, he is pretty good. He's got a 4 administrator skill, which is good, so he'll be good for leading projects. So I'm going to go ahead and get to know him. Now you can see this has changed. The actions only reflect what you can do. These actions that are grayed out, you have to have a certain intel progress in order to get to them. So we've got a 52, which is average. So I can express support, which basically gives him some power. It basically is me out there saying, yes, I think Equanio is a great house leader. He has my full support, and that gives him influence. But I'm not going to do that yet. For now, I'm going to get to know the character. Now this here is the amount of amount of power that I lose if they decline. So in other words, if I try to get to know the character and he declines, I'm going to lose 5 power, okay, immediately. But this is new, this is the decision score, so it's against my power. So the decision score, since I don't have full intel on him, but it looks like the range is pretty close to where it should be. Our intel is solid that Equanio San Pristina should agree to this request. Okay, so I'm going to assume yes, and that's true. That's what happened. So my intel progress increased to 71. So now my intel progress is high. Now I don't have any APs, or I could assign an Inquisitor, which I could consider doing. So I'm kind of getting him on the road. What I want to do eventually is get these Emperor reputation. I want to get them up a little bit. Okay, right now we're all at 0 because I'm brand new and they don't know what to think of me. So, all right, so we'll go ahead. We'll do one more turn since that's kind of quick. We'll see what alerts are there. This should go pretty quickly. If you have more planets, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Other things you can do is you can look at planets that are available. As I said, right now I don't have any planets that I could claim, but I will take a look at that process, and I could claim them. It's just that I would upset the house that is part of that. So I'm going to let it process its turn. It should just take, I've got this down to about 15 to 20 seconds, which is kind of nice. Now bigger games will take longer. When I decrease the number of pops, that will actually change. You can already see it's just about done. Okay, so we got a lot going on here. All right, so we're at end turn. All right, so we're at 3052. So we've got a few things going on here. We've got some trade going on. These white ships are trade. That means they're going to the different planets, because remember I said any system that's part of this that's touching is part of the trade group, so they can trade anywhere between them. So we can kind of take a look. Now we see a white one. Let's take a look and see what's being traded, just to kind of show. We haven't talked a lot about the trade system. It's actually quite robust. So right now, this is Wanderer. This is the capital for Halcyon Musharraf. So right now they need energy. If you look at here, they actually have they're losing energy every turn. So they have traded, asked for energy, and they've also asked for rare materials. This is what their viceroy has asked for. So that's costing them right now 3 billion credits. So that's what's going to be made when I go back to Plenitude. So we have Juthrabog. So they're the ones actually sending it out. Now they're not just sending that out, but so they're making 3 billion credits. So that's kind of nice. So that's one way of kind of making money. All right, so let's see. We've got unrest decreased, which means that unrest has lowered among certain 1 million, so 1 pop, woo. Remember, we didn't put very much towards it. However, you saw we've brought 23 million citizens to heal. So you see my fear has already gone up 2% in 1 turn. That's a lot. And my popular support has dropped. So basically, I've used the military to kind of crush unrest. If I had cranked it all the way up, my fear would probably be around 4 or 5% right now. But I wouldn't have any unrest. Like, for example, if I go to Neo-Cyrus, I look at the average unrest, which you can do by going to public order, and it's at 92%. And if I go out here, you know, we can go to Plenitude. This is something I'm going to be adding. Here's 92%. I'm going to have this on kind of a graphic level, 86%, which is still not bad. And if I keep that up, it's actually going to get even better. All right, so I've built 5 government complexes on Olympia, Wanderer, Iloa Prime, and Illich. All right, so it looks like Hawkins wants to speak to me. So we have the comm requests. So we know Hawkins is my friend, so it shouldn't be anything bad. Sometimes they will probably ask for a favor or a request as opposed to a threat or a demand. And then the last thing, no assassination plot, which means my roll was under 2.8%, so that's good. So let's see what Mr. Dalton has to say. All right, Emperor Hawksnor, I hope this finds you well. What happens, House Hawkins is light on basic materials. It would make us quite happy if you were to appropriate some, perhaps 400 tons. Well, that's like 5% of my entire basic materials stash, so that's quite a bit to ask. But you know what? I need to keep them happy, so of course. Now, on a request, you do not lose power if you decline, because it's just a request, a buddy asking you for a favor. But if it's a threat or a demand, this is public, and you will lose power if you accept, because you're seen as to have basically bowed down before a house leader or whoever asked for it, and so in the public's eye, that makes you weak. Now, if I decline a request, I don't lose power, or I'm sorry, I don't gain power, but if I decline a threat or demand, I actually gain power because the public sees you as standing up and showing some backbone. So, in this case, if I decline, he'll just basically gain some grudge, lose some trust, but nothing major. But I'm going to go ahead and send the materials. So now I'm down to 7,600. And now, when I go to Hawkins, now I've got some positive reputation. And then, of course, he'll like me a little bit more, too. So that's exciting. So he can't really go any higher. We're already allied. But I don't, in case I have to do something that pisses them off later, I'll have a little bit of leeway. So you see, you can go up down to negative 500. You can see here, negative 500 will reduce relations with this house to the next level automatically. So if this number ever gets to below negative 500, I will go down one level. If I do over 200, gotta fix that. Over 200, it enables diplomatic action to increase relations. So for a house action, which basically means I can ask to increase the favor. But I'm already as high as I can go, so that wouldn't help either. So, all right, so let's take a look. We were looking at, okay, so Iloa, they want to build up their planet. So basically what that means is they are looking to increase their admin. They're going to build generally admin facilities, facilities that basically increase their power and their admin so that they can usually do projects. Barwan, okay, they're doing territory, which means they're probably looking to expand, which means they'll probably claim systems. A little nervous about what they're doing because I see over here they have a project. And as you can see, since I don't have full intelligence, I see where they're trying to do something, and I see that it's them, but I don't know what they're doing. So I think actually, didn't I already assign an Inquisitor? I remember. Oh, no, I didn't. Yeah, that's right. It would have that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and assign Inquisitor to you. Now you see they're at 19%. I'm going to put my best person. No, I'm not going to put my best person. Actually, yes. Yeah, I am, because I want to know. They're pretty strong, and if they're expanding, I want to know. All right. Milok, okay, they want to claim systems. Now, they have not claimed it. There is a pretty sophisticated algorithm that basically determines, right now, there's not a lot to pick from. There's only 2 systems. So what will happen is they actually may build a logistical station in order to expand and then reach a system that they can look at. And then, of course, Halcyon, okay, they're building up planets as well. So, and then Hawkins is wealth. That means they're trying to, because they don't seem to have a lot of money. It takes money to create projects. So, all right. So what I'm going to do, I only have 1 AP left. So once again, I can't do a project. So I know that they're doing something down here. They're probably trying to claim this system, which is not going to make Iloa very happy, because as you can see, they have the claim on the system. So I think I'm going to use my last point to, let's look at my planet here. Is there any planet that I can maybe, let's see. And this is kind of where things can diverge depending on what you want to do. So let's see, Hawkins, so they got a little bit of income, but since they're allies, they're going to give me the full income. So, okay, they have a terrible Viceroy economic skill. That's not good. So let's go over to, I gotta fix that. It's got an issue when you're in a system view and you're moving to another system. All right, so let's go to Illich and see what we can do here. So they've got 75 billion credits. Again, terrible economic skill. They've got a lot of retail, and that's interesting. When you look at their ideas, when you look at culture and demographics, this kind of helps give you an idea of what their people like. And also when you go to unrest factors, you see there aren't goods to buy. 92% think there aren't goods to buy. Well, when I go to their demographics, sorry, not demographics, when I go to the ideology, so this is basically the planet's ideology. So we look at worldliness. So worldliness, basically, a 1 basically means that they live like monks and they care about nothing, and a 10 indicates either the belief that there are no matters of the spirit, that the world we live in is all that can matter, or they believe that there may be a world beyond, it is valueless, with true meaning reside in the world around us. So that's funny talk for saying they want stuff. So if their worldliness is at a 9, they want to buy stuff. And their economy will be powered pretty significantly if you give them that stuff to do that. So let's take a look. So we have a small surplus, so we can actually probably shunt a little bit more over to retail. Right now 30%, so that does take out. So if you put her over here, you see already out of my 10.5 energy, 3.2 is already being used for retail, and 3.8 is being used for retail and basic materials. Those are the two things that are used when you decide for retail. Heavy and rare materials are really more for things like military and space systems. They're not really used for like common goods. So okay, so let's take a look at what we can do here. So we know we want to pump up the revenue here, and we know we could probably pump up the retail sector. That would probably help. But man, that Viceroy economic skill. So let's take a look. So I don't have a ton of knowledge on her. I don't know, well, and that's actually a bug. I probably shouldn't be able to see her economic skill. I probably need to put question marks there. But I don't know her government skill either. When I look at her ADM, so I've got a good unrest. So the base ADM is 25. That comes from 5 admin complexes that are staffed, times 5 government complexes. So I get 25 base ADM. Now of that, my pop admin skills are 44, so I get a slight hit on that. It's not 1.0 because 44 is slightly below 50. My Viceroy multiplier is a little bit above 1, so they're not really hurting me that much. They're helping a little bit. And then unrest is low, so when unrest gets higher, ADM decreases because things get less efficient. So right now I have low unrest, so I'm getting a multiplier on that. So she's not terrible, but man, maybe I could find someone better. So here I go to assignment actions. So I'm going to go to, oh, you know what? I can't do it because she's not I can't fire her. The only thing I could do is exile her because she's not on my holding. If it was my holding, I could simply replace her, but I can't do that. The other thing I could do, what I could do is I could offer her a position on the Celestial Council and then switch someone from the Celestial Council into this role. But I really don't want to do that because they're all look pretty happy with me. Actually, that's not them. I have to go to the main screen. Which I actually will do just to kind of show that. This is the Celestial Council. You have your Domestic Prime, your Science Prime, War Prime, Intel Prime, and Financial Prime. So these are your 5 primes. And this is considered a great honor to be on the council. So you generally don't want to move people if you can help it. Right now I don't have anybody really angry with me, which means they're all pretty much neutral and different. And then the Domestic Prime is happy with me, which is good because this position actually affects a lot of the economy and trade and a lot of the efficiency factors on the planet, since she's kind of the top multiplier. So I guess what I will do then is I will go back to Illich and I will go ahead and I will just for the moment I'll ask her to pump up economy. So we'll go to assignment actions. We will go to change retail allocation. Remember, if she declines, I lose 5 power. So there's always going to be some risk, although very low risk in this case. I'm going to ask her to pump it up to, let's do 50%. Yeah, that's fantastic. I see. I believe that would be an intelligent decision. The traders on the planet can make good use of those materials, and we can profit. So that's fantastic. So now what's going to happen is when I reopen this, now we'll be at 50%. And so now the retail sector is actually adding even more. What that will also do is that will make my people happy once that starts kicking in. That will actually make them happy, and that will actually should drop their public order, should start raising that. So there's a lot of stuff that's intertied. When you're helping out a planet, you generally want to do things that are benevolent to your pops so they don't riot. But sometimes there could be value in causing riots on planets that aren't your holdings of houses that don't like you so much. That's just a play style you will have to figure out. All right, so that's basically 2 turns. Kind of looking through, we haven't even talked about projects yet. We'll kind of do that in the next episode, but we'll get that ordered in the next day or so. I'm going to go ahead and save. So by the way, just to show you how to save, very simple. Let's go to Save Game, and it looks like it's hung, but it's really not. It takes about 20 seconds. Once it's done, it will say Save Game Successful. So we'll go ahead and pick up where that left off in the next turn. Until then, have a great afternoon, and we'll see you soon.